that these are the most sensitive and perishable food product, and thus more prone for the contamination and all kind of adulteration. So very very important to have them, because there is a chance of introduction of the contamination as well as increase of the contamination at this very stage of processing, the primary processing, or we can say the agriculture processing, agriculture product processing. So uh, the hazards or the contamination will get introduced at this stage, and it will keep on increasing at the later stage. If it is not controlled at this stage, it will keep on going ahead in the supply chain. And as we say that it's an early element of the supply chain, so basically we need to have control of food safety hazard at this early stage so that we can ensure the product is safe till it reaches to the consumer, final consumer. Next. Now let's see what are the most important issues related with food safety, which are basically in agri-based food processing units or agri-based food processing startups. As I was saying, that the level of contamination in terms of the physical, chemical, and biological hazards is much more at this stage. So, when we talk about the primary processing, we understand that being agriculture produce, there is always a higher level of contamination for all of these things. So, that's the reason it is very important to consider the food safety at this stage. Another very important aspect which is discussed very widely is the chemical contamination or the residues which are being used in agricultural plantation process, which is basically the pesticide issues and insecticide residue and so on. Another important part related with food safety is the pest infestation. Now, when we talk about the pest infestation, it's a very important part because the pest infestation will always start at the early stage and it will keep on increasing throughout the shelf life of the product. So, if it is not controlled at this stage, we cannot ensure the safety of the product during the shelf life till it reaches to the consumer. Traceability. Now, the process industries need to have traceability, and that is one of the very important aspect which is being ignored many of the times. We need to understand why it is so important to have the traceability, because in case of any kind of recall or in case of any kind of food safety related issue, we need to have sufficient data to investigate that problem, and that is the reason why we need to have the traceability, which is an important aspect and which is often ignored in the primary processing or the agriculture processing. Then one of the important thing is that the testing and analysis, unless and until we do the testing and analysis, we will not be able to understand the level of contamination or the level of hazard in a particular product. So there is always a lack of testing and analysis facilities and even the awareness about that. So that is one of the important issue. Storage handling issue for agricultural produce, as these are the sensitive product, these agricultural products or raw materials has to be handled and stored carefully, because that's where the hazard or the contamination will get introduced. Since these products are perishable and sensitive, the temperature control is also a very very important part, and the temperature control or lack of temperature control or awareness about the temperature control for such material is also one of the very important food safety issue which is being observed in this kind of industries. Raw material supply chain, we often see that there is a long supply chain with the farmer and then the trader, transporter, and so on. So the elements of the supply chain as well as the integrity issues, we understand that since post COVID or this Russia Ukraine, we also are talking about the integrity with the food safety. Again, lack of systems in these kind of industries, lack of compliances is one of the important issue. Proper documentation and record keeping, we always feel that the documentation and record keeping, how that things are related with food safety, but we will not be able to investigate anything about food safety unless and until we have a proper documentation and proper record for the particular aspect of the processing industry. And overall, when we talk about the important food safety issue, is overall awareness or low awareness about the food safety practices to be followed in such industries. Can we go to the next one? Now, there are two aspects by which we can ensure the food safety in such kind of industry. One, very, very important, which is a regulatory compliance. Each of the country have their own regulatory requirements which are talking about food safety. And for India, we have FSSAI. Sanjay sir is going to talk more on this, so I'm going to talk about the other things. Second part to ensure food safety is implementation of various systems and standards which are related with food safety management. So one of the or various popular food safety standards include HACCP, ISO 22000, FSSC 22000, BRC, and there are so many other food safety standards which are very important to implement and that will ensure the food safety of the product till it reaches to the consumer. Next. Now let's see some of the important aspects how these standards are going to ensure the food safety. As soon as we say the food safety standard, may it be any standard, all of them are all voluntary international food safety standards. I'm saying it voluntary because it's not mandatory to implement, but still we need to implement these to ensure the food safety. And all of these are the certifiable standard, which means you are supposed to understand the requirements which are mentioned in the standard, implement those standards, get it audited and get it certified by an agency. So these are the voluntary and certifiable standard. Now, when we talk about the standards, the major requirements, which is something to be implemented by the industry, covers following aspects. So first one is overall the standard cover all the things related with the people. Very, very important resource which is responsible to ensure food safety. So it is talking about the training requirements which is related with food safety or the level of awareness which is required to ensure food safety. Awareness even about the role and responsibility of individual to understand the food safety, the systems and the documentation which has to be implemented by the people. So what kind of systems are required? And when we talk about system, it means a particular aspect to be followed by everyone in the same way every time. So what are the systems? Those are to be implemented by the people. What is the kind of documentation that has to be prepared and followed to ensure the food safety? So the first aspect talks about the people and the requirements related with the people. Then about the products, the standard also talks about various aspects of the product related with food safety, like the specifications. The product specifications, what are the important product specifications related with food safety? What are the requirements related with the testing and analysis, and so on. Processes, it also talks about the different processes which are followed in terms of processing or packaging or handling, the parameters required for that, what kind of monitoring is required to ensure these processes are giving the result or ensuring the food safety, and what kind of control measures are required at each of the process so that finally we can give assurance about the safety of the product. It also talks about the procedures which is related with how to follow the things, the guidelines which are related with the process or the hazard control, the guidelines related with the traceability, the documentation related with the traceability, product labeling, and so on. So this also covers overall about the documentation and process and procedure. And one of the more very important is the premises, which also are requirements related with the infrastructure, how the infrastructure should be, what are the hygiene and sanitation and cleanliness requirements, what are the things which are required to ensure the food safety through proper maintenance of the building and the premises and the utilities and so on. So this is basically all major the key points which are covered in each of the food safety standards. So I'm just going to talk in a very, very brief way about the food safety standards. Can we go to the next slide? So, as I said, there are a lot of food safety standards which are very, very popular worldwide, but I have taken four of them, which are most popular food safety standard. The first one is the HACCP, Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Point. Now, when we talk about the HACCP, it is one of the very important aspect related with food safety. Now, this is not only a standard or a certifiable standard, but this is also a basic and most important concept related with the food safety. And if you take example of any food safety standard across the world, each of the standard will have this concept in it. So what we do in HACCP is basically we predict, or this is a preventive control, or this is basically a preventive measure, wherein we predict what kind of hazard can come at each stage and what is the level of risk of these hazard at each stage and how to control. So basically identification of the hazard or the potential hazard, then identification of the risk of that hazard and defining a system to control those hazards is something which is addressed in the entire concept of hazard. So very important concept as well as the certifiable standard. Another one is ISO 22000-2018, which is food safety management system. So now when HACCP started, HACCP has got popularity. In at the same time there was another popular standard in the industry which was ISO 9000. But later on it was understood that ISO 9000 is not a very particular food safety standard, or it's not related with the food industry or particularly related with food industry. It's a generic standard. So there was introduction or establishment of the standard ISO 22000, which is a specific standard related with food safety management system. It was first introduced in 2005, and the first amendment in this standard happened in the year 2018. So it is also talking about ensuring food safety management system to ensure the food safety. FSSC 22000, again one of the standard which is related with food safety, which also covers entire ISO 22000 standard. In addition to ISO 22000 standards element, FSSC have two more elements: PRP, which is prerequisite program, and the additional requirements, which are the FSSC own requirements. So FSSC 22000 standard, another popular food safety standard in the industry. And then BRCGS, which is a global standard for food safety, which is basically developed by BRC, which is a British Retail Consortium, a UK Retail Association. So the two standards which are mentioned here, FSSC and BRC, these two standards are GFSI approved standards, whereas HACCP and ISO 22000 are not GFSI approved standard. Let's quickly see how do we implement these standards in the next slide. Now, when we talk about any food safety standard, first of all, you have to decide which standard to go with, and it's not mandatory that we have to always go with the highest standard, because there are certain standards which are basic standard and little flexible standards. So when we talk about the startup, we need to think about what is feasible for them to implement. So they can start with the basic standards and then they can upgrade to the higher standards. Okay. So the steps which are involved in food safety system certification. So understanding the requirement, first of all, we need to understand what are the specific requirements which are mentioned in the standards in terms of different clauses. Then we need to make the team aware about these standards, what are the requirements through various communications and the training. Then we need to implement these standards the way it is written in the standard. We have to start implementation of the standards, see what are the gaps, and then again work on the gaps. Same time, we have to develop the documentation. We need to understand what are the documentation requirements which are mentioned in the standard to have a system to ensure food safety. Once we are ready with all of these things, there is a process to do the internal audit. So we need to check the level of awareness, the level of implementation ourselves before the external audit. So we have to have a cross-functional internal audit for these standards. Then we are supposed to invite the external auditors by independent agency. They would come and do the audit of our system to ensure that we have implemented these standards in a satisfactory manner, and then there would be a process of certification. Now, once it is satisfactorily completed, the company will be awarded with the certification. But the important thing is that to ensure the consistent performance of the system, which is being implemented for the certification. So it's always necessary that we got the certification, but we have to sustain and keep on, improving, keep on upgrading the certification, or keep on upgrading the system to ensure more and more food safety. So we have to have a consistent system related with the food safety, and thereby we can finally ensure the food safety. So we can ensure food safety doesn't mean, or by implementation of this standard doesn't mean the zero hazard, but it always will ensure a reduction in the food safety hazard, thereby increasing the food safety. So this is basically, in short, how do we implement these standards? Can we go to the next one? So overall, just to conclude, a very comprehensive and collaborative efforts are required to ensure the food safety from farm to fork. And as we know that agriculture-based food processing startup is one of the key segment in this entire food safety or food chain. And these industries need to identify their own uh, specific issues related with food safety and have the focus on various kind of solutions by implementation of various food safety standards, and thereby ensuring overall food safety. So this is it from my side. Next. Alright. So this was overall about just the introduction of food safety standards and the basic things related with food safety standards. So basically, since it was a 20-minute session, so we could cover this much, but I'm sure this would have been informative for all of you. Thank you so much. Over to you, the host.
Yeah, thank you, Sumedha, ma'am.
Thank you.
It's really a wonderful session. I know time is constrained, but you mainly talked about what are the key issues or the challenges are in the food safety industry. And yeah, you are rightly said there is a huge gap as of now as industry is growing, but still there is huge gap that need to be overcome, and that's what many startups are looking in their space as opportunity to overcome these problems. And the main part you were discuss about the key aspects of the food safety standard. But in the nutshell, the 5 Ps of the food safety standards you mainly talked about that any processing industry can be followed by. So it's a really wonderful session. If the participants have any questions, I request them to put your questions in the chat box that we will take up after the second speaker session. And if you have question, you can directly raise the hands also, directly ask the questions to the speakers. So thank you with this note to Sumedha ma'am, and we will come to this our second speaker. Anupam, can you introduce our second speaker, Mr. Sanjay sir?
Yeah, thank you, Amit. So for the second of the half of the webinar, we have with us Mr. Sanjay Indani, sir, who is a food safety expert, a coach, and a trainer. He is a food safety expert, coach, and trainer with 18 years of experience in ensuring the safety and quality of food products. With a background in food science and safety, Mr. Indani has dedicated his career to helping food businesses and professionals navigate the complex world of food safety regulation and best practices. Conducted more than 50 internal auditor training, various open sessions in HACCP, ISO 22000 FSSR training, and 7 lead auditor courses. He has conducted customized training for various sectors like milk, tea, coffee, chocolate, pickles, spices, etc. on legal requirements, Schedule 4, FSSA, and etc. With this brief introduction, I'd like to hand over the session to sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, team. Thank you. I'm audible. Hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're
Yeah,
audible, sir.
thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Manage CIA, and congratulations to you. And I really appreciate your initiative to guide and help the industry, okay, through these webinars. So today we will discuss about the critical food safety measures in the agri startups. So can I have next slide? Yeah, I think this introductory part you can just go next 2 slides. Next. Yes. So, in legal compliances with respect to startup, okay, what we have observed, because I myself work with many startups to help them, to assess them for the overall compliance of legal aspects, right from licensing to a number of things in. Saw is the lack of understanding about the regulation. We have a couple of examples where the startup has initiated the process and they did not look into the compliances which are required under these two regulations. Today, I'm going to talk only about two regulations due to the limitation of time. That is FSSAI and legal metrology. So FSSAI is an apex body in food, and you need to have a compliances for this. So what is the compliance to start with? Can I have next slide? So basically the first compliance what you need to look into is the licensing. So licensing is categorized in a state and central, two categories. What is the basis? The criteria used is KOB, that is kind of business. So what kind of business you are into? Whether you want to do e-commerce, whether you want to do a manufacturing, whether you want to do a trading, what is that kind of business you are into? Based on that, you will be given a state or central license. The next one is capacity. So if you are a manufacturer, what is your manufacturing capacity? Say for example, if your manufacturing capacity is less than 2 metric ton, then you go for a state license. And if you are more than 2 metric ton, then you have to opt for central license. So that is a capacity of your manufacturing. Moreover, if you are a warehouse, then the capacity of your storage. If you are a milk processing, then capacity of milk handling. Okay, based on that the licensing is given. The next is turnover. The turnover criteria is used apart from manufacturers. Say for example, you are trader, you are a retailer, you are wholesaler, you are distributor, you are e-com. So the criteria of turnover is used for deciding which license you will get. And the very important is what product you are going to manufacture. Now many startups, they come with an innovative product. Okay? They have a product which is not really into a standard segment. Maybe that can be kind of a more healthy product. Okay, now we are talking about millet here. So a lot of millet-based products are being manufactured. Okay, millet-based drinks are being manufactured, and those products, because they are not standard product, they fall under a category which is called as a proprietary food. So the proprietary food, if you are manufacturing, then you have to opt for a central license. Now we have examples where the startup is manufacturing this product, which is not a standard and which is of proprietary nature, which is of novel nature, and they opted for state license. Now, during inspection, if it is found that you are not complying to this, okay, then there is a problem and you need to then go for migration, go for conversion from state to central or central to state. So it is very, very important that first hand you understand and then accordingly you comply to these requirements. Next. So the process of licensing, we get an example where the stamps and they say, okay, we already started manufacturing and now we need a license. It's not like that. Okay? You need to understand that the authority will take some time to issue the license. Okay? So the steps what you follow, because there are a couple of documents required in the licensing. So you gather those documents, you apply. It can be done online or you can take some assistance of any agency, or you can take assistance of the government sponsored or government approved agents, okay, which are available in the market. So the license application, and there are timelines given. Okay, so the first timeline is authority may take 60 days to review your documents, to review and come back to you saying that, okay, this is what is required, this clarification is required, you have not mentioned this, you have not given this document, and so and so. Please remember, you need to have at least one science graduate in your startup, okay, who will be responsible for overall compliance of the legal requirements. Okay. That is one of the condition. Now, if the authority doesn't revert within 60 days, then the license is deemed to be issued. Okay? But if authority issues some clarification, comes back, reverts back, then after that, again you need to comply and the 60 days window starts. So there are examples that you get license if it is a simple product, if there are no complication in your process, in your product, okay, the documentation is complete, you may get the license within 20 to 30 days, but you may take 90 days or even more than that. Okay, so there are cases where the application may get rejected and then again you need to reapply after 90 days. So the process need to be understood and need to be adhered before you start the production, before you start your activities. You need to have this licensing application and license issue done. Okay, next. Now, for this licensing, what is important is you need to comply to conditions of licensing. The very important first condition of licensing is you comply to infrastructural requirements. Sumedha has already discussed as a part of food safety management system that infrastructure aspects need to be complied. Yes, the legal authority FSSAI regulation also specifies about the infrastructure. So how your infrastructure should be, okay, it is very, very important. Now, we have certain examples where the startup says that, okay, we are getting it manufactured from other manufacturer, and I'm just doing a marketing, I'm just selling it. Good, no, not a problem. But you need to look into whether that facility is adequate. Because if the facility is not adequate, if you start your production, if your marketing started, and in the middle, if the process is stopped by FSSAI, then the whole of your effort will be in a problem. So you need to look into, if you are doing third party, if you are trying to set up your own unit, you need to look for the compliances of infrastructure. The next very important is good hygiene practices, the GHPs. There are a couple of GHP compliances, GHP requirements are mentioned in regulation, and that is mandatory because these are conditions of licensing. And you need to see that your manufacturer or your unit complies to these good hygiene practices. The very important is you comply to product standard. FSSAI, under his regulation, they have specified food product standards. So whatever product you are manufacturing, that should comply. Now, if the product is not standard, then how do we look into? Because for proprietary food, there are no standards as we discussed. So what in that case? In that case, you need to look into additives. So various additives are being used in the industry by various product R&D developers, and they are not aware whether this product or whether this additive can be used in the product. So please look into this aspect, because we have certain examples where certain additives are not permitted. Say, for example, you are manufacturing some product and you want to use some flavor, okay, you want to use some color, you want to use some a new stabilizer, because that is an innovative product which is coming from outside, the recipe is coming from outside. So in that case, you cannot add if it is not permitted in the regulation. So you need to look for those compliances. Okay. Just 1 second. So product standard is very, very important to be looked into. There are a number of examples what we have with the startup. The peanut butter, you need to look into the specifications of peanut butter. Okay, we had one example where the peanut butter was manufactured and the additives which were used were not approved, were not permitted by FSSAI to be used into. So if you are getting a new product, if you are willing to do a new product, please seek help of the regulatory authority. You can discuss with the regulatory authority. They are very open and cooperative. Go and discuss and tell them that this is what you want, or you can take a help of expert to understand the product's standard requirement. One more area where we saw that most of the startups face issues and fail in the compliance is labeling and claims. Because you want to project that your product is innovative, because you want to project that your product is healthy, there are a lot of claims done on the labels. So if you do any claims, those claims need to be approved. Those claims need to be sufficed. Those claims need to be adequate with respect to regulatory requirement. So if not, then it will be a problem. We have seen certain claims where you say sugar free, where you say fat free, where you say rich in protein, where you say gluten free. So for all those claims, you need to have a substantiated document, otherwise it creates a problem. So labeling and claims are very, very important because the regulation has the labeling compliances given, and you need to comply to the labeling aspect 100%, and if you don't comply, that will create a problem. As it was mentioned by Sumedha, the testing of the material to be done. Similarly, in regulation, there are certain testing aspects already mentioned that you need to look into testing aspects. So the testing of finished product is to be done, and it is mandatory that once in 6 months you need to test the product from the approved laboratory, from the recognized laboratory. Now, during our assistance to startup, we see that the testing is done from non-approved laboratory, and then whatever money was spent, that goes into waste. So that is not acceptable. So you need to understand what are the requirements and look for better compliances. The traceability, this is a key issue which is mandate under the regulation to maintain a traceability. In simple words, what you need to prove under traceability is from where you received raw material, which date raw material, which lot of the raw material you used in the process, and which finished product you have dispatched to someone, your customer. Okay. So you have to establish a material traceability. You have to establish information traceability. What were the processes followed? You need to have the records. What parameters you followed? You need to have records. So all those records will form a traceability, and there the system works. So whatever she mentioned about the system, about documentation, about records, so it helps in maintaining the traceability aspect, because traceability is one of the legal requirements. So these are certain conditions of licensing. Okay, to brief you on these aspects, because this is very, very important to understand the legal compliances with respect to FSSAI. Next. Legal metrology, you need to have these minimum 3 compliances with respect to legal metrology. If you are in a packing, if you're doing some manufacturing, there is a requirement that under legal metrology, you need to do a packing registration. Okay. So packing registration is one-time exercise where you register yourself as a packer with a legal metrology. That is a mandatory requirement. If you are using certain weighing scales, if you are using certain volumetric fillers or any kind of device, okay, where you are claiming that, okay, it is measuring in numbers, it is measuring in grammage, it is measuring in ml or volume, then you need to do a stamping of those equipments, weighing scales, and that is one of the important mandatory requirement which you need to comply on annual basis. And the third one is labeling. So labeling is controlled, governed by FSSAI and legal metrology. So both the agencies control labeling aspects. So you need to look into what labeling aspect need to be complied under the legal metrology regulation. Next slide. So to conclude, it is very important you comply to the legal requirements to avoid any litigation issue, any penalties, because there are heavy penalties for the non-compliances, and there are examples where the license is suspended and your financer, your stakeholders, they are in problem, your business in problem, and that should not happen. So always advisable to have an expert on board who will guide you, who will suggest you, who will look into. Or if you have an organizational structure which is defined, then have a regulatory person on board which will help you. So with this, I conclude this session, and we can have questions. So please connect me on LinkedIn for further any query, any clarification. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sanjay sir. I must say it's more or less focusing on the legal compliances part, which is, as you mentioned early in your beginning of your session, that mostly neglected by the startup. But why it is important? In a very short time span, you explain about the conditions, different compliances conditions, the packaging compliances, the food product standards, why it is important. So it's really going to be helpful to the startups for those who are already into the food business sector and those who are looking for to start their own venture in this domain. So with this, we will move to the next hour session of the question and answer session. So I'm once again, I'm requesting to the participants, if you have any questions, you may put it into the chat box or you may raise the hands. We will take up one-on-one questions. So yeah, several questions I have also taken it from my end as well, sir. So we'll start with this. Many times what happens, Sanjay sir, I want to ask you that legal compliances, although it's really important, but they don't know how to proceed or no such a training or awareness is there. So mainly they go for the outsource it for the third party persons. So in that way, how they should manage it by their own, or they should go for the other services, and what will be the maximum charges they should consider the services from the other person. If you can give a rough idea about it to the
See,
startups.
basically, what they should look into is first with the compliance of licensing. Okay, so for licensing, they can approach the FDA or FSSAI officials. Okay, they can get information, or they can approach the agencies like you have AFSTI, Association of Food Scientists and Technologists of India. Okay, you
Yeah.
have many NGOs, many experts where they guide you on this, and uh, or you can hire expert. Okay, and seek the advice.
True, sir. True. Yeah. Of course, always the government websites are there to guide you, but such a NGOs you mentioned mainly specifically ASFTI, so that
AFS.
details also
Yeah.
be sharing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're going to be help in a many ways connecting to the startups
Yes.
with the market and the mentors in the food sectors as well as for the compliances purpose. It's a good way to take the advices from them. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, let's coming to the one more question maybe to the Sumedha ma'am. As you rightly mentioned, the five apps systems are mentioned. So many times the startups are not aware at the beginning when the operations are very initial stage, very small unit. They start from their home or maybe very small shade of 500 to 300 square feet yard. So what are the food safety standards they should follow? What kind of certification they should opt? And maybe next stage level, they will go for the ISO and HACCP certification. But very basic starters like SHGs, those who are running from their houses or homes, or a small individual food processing unit started. So what will be your advice to which certification they go for? And what are the compliances they should maintain to go for the next certification level?
See, when we talk about compliances, Sir has already informed or already given information that the scheduled food requirement or all the basic requirements, which is something that is a mandatory requirement. Now, it covers all good manufacturing practices. Those are nothing but the basic practices. I'm just focusing on the word basic because that's not something which will need a very, very huge infrastructure or a sophisticated infrastructure. So it is basically talking about the practices to be followed, may it be a small enterprise or may it be a big enterprise, and the approach of the food business owners and the team of the food business. So I think the basic good manufacturing practices is something you can start with. This is the foundation for food safety. Once you start doing that, you can keep adding the standards and certification and all. As I said, certification is not something mandatory. You can go to that gradually once you are ready with the basic things, and then you are habituated with that basic practices. I think it is mainly hygiene, sanitation, cleanliness, and the approach of people for doing the work, I think. So I think that this is mainly related with the basic food safety, nothing else. Then you can go for a HACCP, ISO, and these are the steps you can go for higher standards
Yeah, right.
and get it certified. Again, certification is later stage. You can get ready for all of these things. Getting certified is another thing which you may or may not opt, but following the standard is something which is necessary. Yeah, that's it.
Very, very true, ma'am. Following the standards is very important. Sanjay sir, you want to add something in that question?
Basically, as she mentioned, see, you need to have the initial basic compliances with respect to the various requirements. Okay, and if you want to go further, as like the system implementation always help you in standardizing the processes so that you reduce your wastage, you have a consistency in the product quality, okay, ensure that your food safety is complied, okay, and all the standard, may it be HACCP, may it be ISO, may it be FSSC, BRC, whatever scheme we are talking about, all those require basically to comply to the legal requirements. So what happens when you have these kind of systems implemented, you are in compliant with the legal requirements, okay, you are not worried about your customer complaints, consumer complaints, okay. There is a methodology of taking actions. As she mentioned about internal audit, you verify your processes internally, and that really helps you. So it is always good to have these systems. If you have certification, that is well and good or and above of the compliances. But if you implement, yes, there are many advantages in the industry which we have seen.
Agreed, agreed. That's the main intention to keep the today's webinar, sir, and make aware
Absolutely.
why it is more important to follow the standards and the FSI
Absolutely.
certification. Yeah.
Absolutely.
We can see in the attendees, Ramakant has raised his hand. Saurabh, could you please unmute him to ask the question? Hello. Yeah, Ramakant, sir, can you hear me? Hello.
Yeah, it was good, sir. I has raised so that to check that
Okay, I
instructions.
see.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So you don't have any question, right?
Right. I'm understanding the session, sir. Thank you. It was very
Oh,
helpful.
thanks. Okay. Okay. There is one more question is coming from the participants that from the Purushottam, he wants to know more about the BIS certification, that how it is ensuring about the food safety. Maybe Sanjay sir or maybe Sumedha ma'am, you can take up this question.
See, BIS BIS basically is mandate for certain products, okay, not for all products. Say classic example, you want to do packaged drinking water, okay, or water related new innovative products, okay. If it falls under beverage, then BIS is not mandate, but for water products, yes, BIS is mandatory. So we need to look into what product we are manufacturing, okay, and based on that, we need to look for the legal compliances. If you are into spice manufacturing, you need to comply to AgMark in addition to FSSAI requirement.
Okay.
So what products we are manufacturing, then only we can decide, okay, so what are the compliances? Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So any website or where they can find out that for what product, what kind of certification they can opt, if you can.
See, it is not under. I would say it is not very clear where they will understand. But yes, if you look into FSSAI regulation, okay, uh, we have about more than 24, 25 regulations. Okay, so under that, 2, 3 main regulations is like licensing regulation, food product standard regulation, labeling regulation. So under food product standard regulation, and there is one more regulation which is called as prohibition regulation. So we need to look into those regulation and understand that what are the extended requirements with respect to that product.
I see. Yeah, I got it, sir.
Yeah.
I hope, Purushottam sir, you got the answer. We'll move to the next question that so you mentioned about the food trade secrets. Like sometimes while we are using the ingredients, we have to check
Yes.
whether it's approved by the global food safety
Yes.
standards or not. But when it comes to the food trade secrets, so in that case, how they should deal, whether they should disclose their recipe or in that way, whether it is acceptable by the global food safety standards. There is always a question mark in the minds of food trader, food manufacturers. So in that case,
Yeah.
how they should deal?
See, basically when we say that you need to look into food product standard and approved additives, say for example, we are talking about stabilizers. Okay, so there are 10 or 15 categorization of stabilizers which are available. Okay, so out of those 15 stabilizers which you are using, that you need to disclose if it is a proprietary food. Okay,
Mhm.
you need not disclose what percentage you are adding. Okay.
I see.
Now, if we talk about trade secret, now there is no trade secret as such, okay? Because when it comes to legal authority, they can ask you anything, and you need to produce that, okay? So there is no trade secret in as far as regulation is concerned. But yes, you need to look into. There are certain additives where you have upper limits are given. Say for example, you can only add 1 gram, or you can add only 0.5 milligram, or you can only add 1000 ppm. Okay, so that you need to see, and you need to keep your levels below. Say for example, if you are making chocolate product, if you are making some confectionery product, okay, in confectionery you are permitted to use colors. Okay, so what color you are using, whether it is food grade color or not, and what labels you are adding. You can't add up to say 500 ppm because the limit is established. You cannot have more than 130 or 170 ppm or 150 ppm. So for individual product, you need to see what additives are permitted, what level it is permitted, and if you have any innovative product being manufactured, innovative any additives being used, you need not disclose your percentage, but yes, you need to disclose which additive you are using. That is mandate.
I see. So it's really.
Absolutely. I would like to add
Yeah.
something into this because as soon as the question was asked, I always relate this question because many people think that if we disclose and people will get to know about our product and they can copy our product. But let me tell you, this is a very, this is again a very popular misunderstanding among all the food business startup. By knowing your ingredients, nobody will be able to copy your product. Moreover, it is a right of consumer to understand what is there in the product without having the quantification of that particular ingredient. They are they should be aware about what is being added in terms of additives, colors, and so on, so that they can have informed choice. So I think these are the two most important things which I would like to add in addition to Sanjay's and
Yeah, very true. I hope it is very
Yeah.
much clear to the startups that they who are worried about their formulation. So only the percentage or the quantity what the formulation you are manufacturing, that you can keep it secret, but not the ingredients. That's what
Yeah.
we are
Absolutely.
using.
Absolutely.
So there is one more question is coming from the participant side. Miss Rashmi, she wants to know that regarding the property, means the proprietary of the products, if it is into the food-based or cosmetic category. So which license you should obtain, either whether it is from the central government or whether it is from the state government, or there are different authorities who are dealing into that. So the
Okay.
product may be into the food or it may be into the cosmetics, like she wants to get the
Okay.
clarification.
Okay. See, basically, when we talk about proprietary food, okay, the definition of proprietary food is you are bringing some innovation, you are bringing some non-standard product. Whether I say non-standard product means you are using some additive which is permitted in the category but in not in the product, or permitted in other category and you are using in this category. Okay. So you need to understand that this is my proprietary product, and for all proprietary products, so as soon as you say that this is a proprietary product, you need to have a central licensing, that is a mandate. Okay. Now coming to cosmetics, if you are talking about cosmetics, it is not covered by FSSAI. Okay. It is covered by Food and Drug Administration, because they have the Cosmetic Act, okay, which is governed by FDA. So if you want to have an innovative cosmetic, then you need to go for FDA registration, FDA approval, and all those requirements, compliances. Okay? So that is not under purview of FSSAI, but it falls under the different regulation. Okay? There are international regulations also with respect to cosmetics, and in India we have Cosmetic Act, which is governed by FDA. So respective state FDA will issue a license.
So it's very true, sir, that in which segment or the in this sector you're offering your product, based on that you need to avail the certification. So I hope it is
Yes.
clear, Rashmiji, to you for which industry you're offering this product. There is one more question is coming from the participants. Probably we'll take this last question as time is running out.
Yeah.
Many students or the agri graduates, they're looking into the food as a main domain or the career opportunities. So, sir, in a what way you can give them a message, and which way they should look where the opportunities are coming, looking the trends in the future, like superfoods are emerging,
Yeah.
or the mainly people are preferring the nutrition as a one domain. So, where you've seen that the trends is moving, that the students can looking their career opportunities.
Yeah. See, basically, if you look at the revolution which has happened in Indian food industry in last 10 years, okay, uh, there's a number of industries have come up, a number of new products have been evolved, okay, and post COVID, if you see the changing in the consumption pattern of the consumer, okay, has brought a lot of new products in the market, okay, a lot of awareness with the people, okay, as you mentioned about superfood, the protein-rich food. There are many concepts like gluten-free, okay, the new concept will come GMO free, and so and so. So as far as food professional is concerned, okay, you have enormous scope. Either you go for a startup, or you can be a professional who is working and supporting to the existing industry. What is required is what we need to understand as a fresher. Okay, you need to have certain breathing time, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, okay, where you understand the processes, where you gain the knowledge, okay, and where you, as a food professional, you should have knowledge on the regulatory aspect, you should have knowledge on the system related aspect, as mentioned by Sumedha. So This knowledge is important. Today, as a food professional, you're not simply talking about only bricks and acidity and pH and those kind of things. Okay, you're not a chemist. You're different than chemist. Okay, you should raise your bar to have all these holistic approach to understand all the requirements with respect to compliances. Okay? So industry is looking at you as a compliance officer. You should
Yeah,
be able to read label. You should be able to read what is the regulation saying. You need to guide the industry on that, and you need
very
to look for the compliance. That is very, very important. So if you can do this, if you have those abilities, so first you develop those abilities, your competence, and then you enter in the industry. So it's a sky is the limit, because we have seen in pandemic only two industries were operating, only food and pharma. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sumedha ma'am, you want to add something?
Yes, I totally agree with sir. And as sir has already mentioned, a lot of categories and a lot of food products and the different roles to be played in the food processing industry. I would just add into it not only manufacturing, there is a lot of scope with respect to distribution. As we can see that there are a lot of new startups which are coming, which are focusing on the distribution, which are focusing on the convenience of the distribution. Like, Bliss is the example. So you can get it in the minutes, whatever you need, you can get it in the minutes. So manufacturing of these innovative products, as well as the business or the startup related with making these things available to the consumer in a very convenient way, can also be seen as an opportunity. So this is from my side.
Yeah, very true. So, in a nutshell, from where farms produce started till it goes to to the consumer's plate, you have the opportunities. Either it may be in supply chain management, either it may be in the manufacturing, either it may be in administration on compliances. So you have to identify where you can fit into and the requirements. So yeah, it's a very big, I must say, the sector. And as rightly Sanjay sir said that during pandemic, only two industries are run. That is, one is pharma and the food. So you have n number of opportunities in this sector. So yeah, with this note, we are already running with the time. I would like to say the thank you to the today's speaker. But before that, I would request to the participants kindly provide us the feedback of the today's webinar. Also, whatever the topics you want to hear us from the in the future webinar series, kindly give us your inputs as well. Along with that, I request to follow our social media pages where you will get the timely updates about our maybe startup related programs, other different cohort programs related to different startup schemes. We are regularly sharing there so that you will get the updates from us. And also there is one more announcement that the digital marketing training program, which is an online 10 days training program where applications are open till this September of the 30th. So you can take this opportunity to get trained from the industrial experts from the managed end. Yeah, and thank you being joining with us and asking the questions there. Without of you, we cannot able to organize the webinars. For your continuous support to us, thank you. And last but not in the least, my team for successfully organizing these webinars. Thank you all. Thank you, speakers, for your
Thank you very
valuable time.
much. Thank you. Thank you, Manisha. Thank you, team. Thank you, participants. Please connect on LinkedIn. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Very well organized program, and I look forward for the other sessions also. Thank you so much.